everybody for joining us and being with us. I'd say good afternoon from the UK. I imagine most people here are from the UK. We've sort of targeted this breakout session to a UK audience. So yeah, big thank you for being with us. It's a real privilege to be part of the event. I hope it's going to be worth everybody's while today. So my name is Oliver Contis. I'm the sales and account management lead for Curve within the nonprofit division, and I'm joined by Mandeep Pradhan, who's going to be running the session today. So I'll let him introduce himself shortly when I hand over. But just as a brief background to Curve, again, I apologise if people were on the last session. You may have heard this already, but we're very close partners to Microsoft's Tech for Social Impact team. We've been working with them since that was founded, and we've been at the forefront of several of its product launches over recent years. So the reason we're here today is a sort of educational piece, a sort of coming together of different partners to share some knowledge around one of the Tech for Social Impact team's latest products, which is known as Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. So we're going to be looking at some use cases in more detail when I hand over, but yeah, there's some really exciting innovations within Cloud for Nonprofit, and we'll be talking about some of the sort of IP elements that Curve have produced as well and that are in use across some major UK charities, and some of the lessons learned that have come with that as well. So you'll see from the slide, we've worked with many nonprofits over the years, and continue to be involved in some really exciting transformation programs there as well. So typically centered around CRM, fundraising, supporter engagement type requirements. And yeah, happy to take questions around any of those sort of lessons learned and use cases as we go through the session today. There's a Q&A function, we've got the chat. So please feel free to drop questions in there and we'll do what we can to help. And I think the last thing from me is just a reminder, as Harmony was just saying, this session's being recorded. So yeah, your participation in the event constitutes consent to being recorded. So please bear that in mind. But I think that's everything in terms of housekeeping. So again, thank you for being with us. And Mandeep, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and take us forward. Cheers.
Yep, cool. So good to meet you all. My name's Mandeep Pradhan. I'm a principal architect here at Curve. I've been working with the Power Platform for about 16 years now. So I've seen it from its various iterations from version 1.2. I don't know where 1.1 or 1.0 went, but that was the first iteration that Microsoft released into the public, through to where it is today, which is the big juggernaut. That's the Power Platform, Dataverse, Azure integration, all that kind of thing. And my primary focus for the last sort of 10 years has been working with charities like yourselves. What we're kind of going to have a look at today is a couple of pieces of the Curve IP. Now, we spoke about, or in the previous session, we spoke about Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit and what it was. Now, Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit is a platform which Microsoft have released, which sits inside of your Dynamics 365 system, and it has been pre-built, pre-configured to solve a lot of the common scenarios that charities may have. So for example, it's got a data model that you can use on day one. It's also got integrations for some of the income processing, such as credit card providers, such as Stripe. It's also got things like opportunity nurturing, pledge agreements, that kind of thing as well. However, one of the things that you will notice with Cloud for Nonprofit is it's a good starting point, but it needs to be taken a little bit further, in particular for regional specific functionality, such as direct debits, gift aid, that kind of stuff as well. And what we've done here at Curve is we've kind of worked with Microsoft to build a set of accelerators which are sat within Dynamics Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. And what it gives you is it plugs some of those gaps for you. So I'm going to flick on a couple of slides, and what I'm going to show you today is kind of what that very simple layered approach looks like, what the kind of the fit gap analysis was, and then we're going to get straight into our accelerators. So if I start with this slide here, this really nice graphic here kind of gives you a simplified view of how those layers with Microsoft work together. Now, what we've got at the bottom is you've got the main Microsoft cloud, so your M365, your Azure, all of that infrastructure, all of your environments, all of that kind of stuff. And then the orange block on top is your CRM system. So that's Dynamics 365 or Dataverse. Now, what Microsoft have done is they've developed that green layer there as a pre-configured product. And what you can do with that pre-configured product is you can install it on day one. There's a lot of charities install it on day one and they're up and running. But those of you who are doing a lot more with your with your CRM system, such as processing income from within it, such as doing things like direct debits, gift aid claim, that kind of stuff. What you need is you need extension to that cloud for nonprofit layer. And what we've done here at Curve is we have worked with Microsoft and we've built that purple layer. So Curve IP is the Microsoft accelerators that you're going to see that Curve have built. And what we do is those are fully configurable with Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. They're built with Microsoft CRM as its ethos, and we give those away to all of our charities free of charge. And what you'll get is you'll get a repeatable accelerator that has been tried and tested in the field. So people like WaterAid, English Heritage, we've recently installed these at Crisis and the British Horse Society are all using these accelerators. And by having that tried and tested manner, you reduce risks and you also expedite and increase your delivery efficiency as well. Yeah. So you're not building these ground up, you're not retesting them over and over ground up. You've already got a pre-built module there that you can install and quite quickly get up and running. And then finally, that blue layer is kind of like that unique configuration layer that all charities have. You may have something unique to you, and then that blue layer is where we layer that on top. Okay, so where did these accelerators come from? So as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit was a platform released by Microsoft. And what we did at Curve was we did a in-depth fit gap analysis, which was validated by Microsoft, which worked out what you got out the box, which you can put in there with some light configuration, but you can be up and running quite quickly. What you would not require a bit more in-depth configuration for without writing code. Yeah. And what didn't exist or existed in a format that couldn't be used for charities in the UK. And what we came up with was this kind of metrics here. So to summarize, green means out the box, you can plug it in and you're up and running quite quickly. Amber means you need some extension in there. And red means it didn't exist. So what we did was we looked at the areas which didn't exist and we decided to fill those out with accelerators. Yeah. Now, some of this stuff, such as consent management, you would get that via something like customer insights. We previously did have an accelerator in there, but customer insights has come along. It's compatible with MC4N and you'd use that. But the big three areas we've got is kind of integrations with things like Just Giving, HMRC, bottom line PTX for direct debits, membership modules which control the whole life cycle of the membership. We've also got accelerators which allow you to build portals without incurring the heavy licensing costs of things like Power Pages, and income processing. So the big areas are how you handle transactions, how you process direct debit income, how you process gift aid income as well. And we conducted this fit gap analysis in detail, and we worked with Microsoft who validated it for us, and then they endorsed the building of those accelerators. And as I mentioned earlier, they're fully compatible with those layers of the cake you saw earlier, and we give those away free of charge. Yeah? So once we give them away in a royalty-free license, they're yours to take forward. You can, further configure those, you can further customize those, and the key thing around it is you are not locked to the partner in regards to those. We hand those over to you free of charge. Okay. So I'm going to flick on to the next slide and just talk about a little bit about what is an accelerator. Now, an accelerator is not a product, and it is a process or tool which speeds up results such as delivery. Yeah. So it's there instead of taking 3 months to do direct debit, you can do it in 2 weeks. Instead of taking a month to do gift aid, you can build it out in a few days. And what it does is it improves that time to value processing you've got. It's been pre-configured, pre-tested. It's been preloaded in environments just like like the ones you may have. It's tried and tested. And as I mentioned earlier, there is no vendor lock-in. We give these away free of charge, and we don't say you pay us a license fee and you must come to us for everything regarding these accelerators. And another key point, as I mentioned earlier, is it is fully compatible with the underlying platform that you get. Okay. Now, before I go into the demo, I want to show you something called a data mill. Yeah. Now, data mill is a piece of technology which Curve Digital have built. And what it is a embedded integration tool for Dynamics 365. And what you give it is you give it a source, and what it will then run through is something called a pipeline, which we'll see shortly. And what the pipeline will do is process the data that it gets. It will process the data, transform the data, it will give you results, and it will then push the data into a target state. So think of the source being anything you want. So the source could be an API, could be the Just Giving API. You bring the data in, the data mill pipeline processes that data and creates fundraising pages, it creates income pages, that kind of stuff in Dynamics. The source could also be Dynamics. So it could be things like, give me a list of income, which is due for gift aid. The pipeline will process that gift aid for you and spit it out into a target form. Or it could be just as well, give me a list of claims or direct debits. It will process that claim for you, build that claim, and push it out to the target state for you. So it is a piece of technology which underpins all of the accelerators that we're suggesting here, and we give this free of charge to you. You install it in Azure, and the way it works is via a SQL mirror engine. So it takes snapshots of your database. So CRM isn't doing the heavy lifting, so you don't get performance issues in CRM. And outside of CRM, it can run through the processing very quickly. For example, we've got water aids, hundreds of thousands direct debit down to like a few hours of processing, whereas previously it will take a few days. So data mill is a really important engine that we're going to have a look at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive straight into transaction management and direct debit. But before I do, I'm just going to introduce you to a couple of personas. So I'm going to introduce you to our potential regular giver. So Dave Parker is a supporter, and he has rang in our charity, and he wants to make a regular gift for £10 a month. And we need to set that £10 a month up. And what we've got is we've got Alan, who works in our supporter care team. Alan's responsibilities include setting up those direct debits. And once the direct debit has been set up, Alan is kind of responsible for sending or submitting the lodgement or the instruction to the direct debit bureau and producing a direct debit claim each month and processing the rejections from that claim, that kind of thing. And the journey enlisted here that we're going to have a look at is Dave is going to call in the charity with a request to create a new direct debit. Alan is going to take the call, and we're going to create that new regular gift in CRM. And this will create Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit record tables, yeah, called payment schedule and payment method. And it will do it all in one place for you, and I'll show you shortly how we do that. Okay. The system will then submit the instruction. So once we've set up the new direct debit, the system will create a lodgement record and submit that to the direct debit bureau, which in this scenario is bottom line PTX. Now, the beauty of data mill, which I showed you previously, is that you can spit it out to whatever format you want. So you can use backs away, you can go direct to bank, you can spit out a formatted backs file. Data mill is fully configurable and lets you do all of that. And once we've submitted that instruction to the bank, what the system will do is mark the regular gift as being lodged and submit that gift to the bank or submit that instruction to the bank. And what the system will do is it will then wait 3 days for a response from the direct debit bureau before marking your payment schedule or your regular gift as being ready. Yeah. And once it's ready, you can then start claiming gifts against it. So that's kind of the first journey that we're going to have a look at. The second journey is very much regarding the direct debit claim process. So what is going to happen is on claim day, a autonomous process is going to wake up and run the back submission pipeline. Yeah, that is basically the process which is going to build out the claim for you. And what Alan will get is Alan, being the supporter care team, will get a prompt to approve the claim. So you can check the claim, approve the claim. And once the claim has been approved and it has been built, it is then uploaded as part of stage 3 there to the bottom line PTX, which is the BACS Bureau. And what the pipeline will then do is create the transactions for you along with the designation credits and increment any dates to the following month, ready for the next claim. And after 3 days, if you get any reconciliation from the bank, or you get any rejection files from the bank, what Alan can do is he can download those rejection files, your audits, your ADAX, your ARUDs, and he can process those within the CRM system, which will then go mark the transaction as being missed, or it will mark the direct debit as being cancelled if the pay is deceased and so forth. So we're going to have a look at these journeys today. Now, what I'm going to do is very, very quickly, I'm just going to share my screen. So let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and you should be able to see a CRM system or what looks like a CRM system on the screen. Okay, now what you're seeing here is Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit with the Curve Digital accelerators installed in it. Okay, so with that, it will look and feel like a dynamic system. You'll navigate through it like a dynamic system, and the processing happens via dynamics processings behind the scenes. Now, what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to open up Dave's record. So if I was to click on Dave's record here, I'm going to go to Dave's record. Now, what you'll see is you'll see that 360 view of Dave's record. You'll see the supporter snapshot, which we looked at earlier, and you'll see various actions in the system, such as the actions to create regular gifts as well. Okay. Now, before I go into the regular gift, I'm going to show you a little bit around the transaction management side of stuff. Okay. So I'm just going to open up a couple of options here. Just bear with me. So I have a transaction record here. Now, a transaction record represents the piece of income that's going to be created in CRM. Yeah. Now, this transaction could be created manually, or it could be created automatically for you. One of the ways it could be created is via the direct debit process. So if you've got 50,000 direct debits, every month, 50,000 transactions will be created automatically in the system for you. If you're integrating from the outside inwards, you would create the transaction record, which will create the various elements for you. Now, what we have on here, you've got various demographics, such as who is the donor. In this scenario, Fred Flintstone's the donor. You've got, how you're coding the income. So what income code the code is going to go to, how the income was sourced via the source code, any payment schedules, which are the pledges that it belongs to, what was the entity that processed the income. So if the income was coming in directly to the bank, it'd be your bank in there. If the income was coming via Just Giving, you'd have Just Giving in there and so forth. Yeah. And one of the other key things you'd also have is the system will create designation credits for the split of income. So for example, if the primary designation was set to, in this scenario, general unrestricted, your income will all be allocated to general unrestricted. And what you can then do is you can split that income and say £5 goes to a restricted fund and £5 goes to an unrestricted fund and so forth. But the key thing in this scenario here is if I was to open up the designation credit, this designation credit has not been posted. And by what we mean by posted is reconciled over to the finance system. So it is the credits that you push over to the finance system. And once it's gone into finance, a process which can then be written to update that posted date. So in this scenario, a piece of IP that we've got, part of the accelerators that we give, if I go back to my donation form, if I click on the modify button, I've got a request adjustment. And by requesting an adjustment, this basically means you can adjust the piece of income. And by adjusting it, you can either reverse the whole piece of income out because it's been put in by error, or you could refund parts of it as well, do a full refund, a partial refund, and so forth. So if I click on the type and I click on refund, I've got reasons. Again, these reasons are fully configurable. Click on duplicate income, what type of refund it is. We're going to be giving cash back. What's the refund reference? So I can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in here. Okay. I can do a full refund or a partial refund. You can refund against various credits. So if you split the income, you can say, well, I'm only refunding the bit, which is the unrestricted part. I'm going to click on submit. And what the system will then do is it will reverse that part out for you. Okay, so this lets you manage your adjustments. It lets you manage your transactions in a way that out the box doesn't let you do. Yeah. So if we go in here, the amount is now set to 0 and the status is set to refunded. Okay. If I go to my a separate one. If I just click on this one here, and we go to designation credits, what you will notice is that the designation credit has already been posted, which means this piece of income has been sent across to your finance system. Therefore, we can't just mark it as 0 in CRM, because by marking it as 0 in CRM, you will not get that reconciliation with finance because it still exists in finance. So I'm going to click on the modify option. I'm going to click on request adjustment, and you can configure this. So any request for adjustment on income, what you can then do is you can have approvals on there and things like that. So I'm going to do exactly the same here, bearing in mind this is a posted piece of income. Okay, stick on cash, we'll do a full refund. I'm going to click the submit option, and what you can also get is at this point you can configure it to have a what's the word I'm looking for, a approval step in there. But what we've now got is we've got a separate transaction record created for the refund. And if you go to designation credits, we've got the reversal credit in there. So you've got the reversal line, which will be sent over, and it will reconcile against the piece of income that was already in your finance system. So we've got beautiful journaling set up within our accelerators as well, which you don't get out of the box. And again, we give you this free of charge. It's fully yours to take forward. We'll come in there, set it up for you on day one, and so forth. Yeah. So that's kind of the transaction management side of stuff. I'm going to now kind of go into the regular gift. So I'm going to go into Dave Parker's record. And as you saw earlier, there's a couple of records here that need to be created for a regular gift. We've got Dave Parker on the phone. Record number 1 is the payment schedule. The payment schedule is basically the schedule and the clock behind the direct debit. Record number 2 is something called the payment method, which is the mandate. So it's the bank details for Dave that it needs to create. Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit has created 2 separate records for that. And the reason is you may have more than one schedule against the same mandate. And therefore, without creating multiple mandates, you can just hang those in and so forth. But from a user experience point of view, it's quite difficult to create 2 records in one go. So what our accelerator lets us do is it lets us click on the create new regular donation button. And we've got a really nice streamlined form here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a regular donation for £20. I'm going to select the frequency in here. I'm going to select the payment run in here, and I'll show you what the payment run is shortly. I can select the campaign. I can select the appeal that this regular donation was acquired under. Okay. I'm going to select the designation. So how we're going to code all the income that's going to be created monthly, what the regular source is, so the website. Yeah. And down here, I'm gathering the details of the actual mandate. So the bank details for Dave Parker. If I've already got a mandate, I can select an existing mandate, or I can create a new one. So in this scenario, we're going to say Dave's Bank. I'm going to put in some bank details in there. If I put in bad format in there, if I try and save now, the system will come back and say the sort code is not in the right format. So I'm going to change the sort code to the right format. So it's 6 figures. Okay, click on save. And what the system will now do is saying, right, okay, there is a bank checker built into our accelerator using something called locate. And what the bank checker will do is it will validate whether those bank details are actually valid or not. Do they exist? And if they don't exist, it will stop you from saving the record there and then. You can wire that into your websites as well if you're capturing regular donations via website. But what it does is it increases the chances of this making it through into the direct debit run and reduces the chances of a audit rejection coming back. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put in some test details that do exist. And I'm going to click on save. And what the system will do now is it will create us a new regular gift. Okay. So if I click on payment schedules, what I now have is I have a new regular gift or a payment schedule created for £20 for Dave Parker. And what it has also done, it has worked out when do we start our regular donation, when the next payment due date is, that kind of stuff. And the way it's done that is via this payment run record, which is fully configurable. So if I go into the payment run record, if you've got 2 payment days a month, you'd have 2 payment run records a month. And what the system will do is the entry day is the payment day. So if it's the 1st and the 15th, you'd have the 1st in there or the 15th in there. And then every month it will work out how many days prior does the bank need to have your direct debit. In this scenario, the bank saying, well, we're the next payment day for the 1st is the 5th, is May, and therefore the 29th of May is the date that the bank needs that. And when you roll over to June, it will do the same for June. It does the same for every month. So it works out when the bank needs paying based upon a configurable lead time option that you've got in the system. And this is fully configurable, and you can avoid bank holidays, which you can set up. You can, is this a regular donation? If you wanted to do automatic representation, i.e. you've missed a payment, you want to recollect it, the system lets you do that. You can avoid weekends and that kind of stuff as well. So if there is an unexpected bank holiday, like we had last year, you can set that up in the bank holiday schedule, and the system will honor that for you automatically. Okay. Now going back to my regular giving my payment schedule record, what it has done, it has set up all of the details. We've got our appeal. If we were using representation, it will set all of this up for us. But the key thing here is it's this status here. Now, what this status is saying that a new regular gift has been created and it is pending lodgement, which means it needs to be sent to the bank. And the way it will send this regular donation instruction to the bank is via that data mill that we spoke about earlier. So behind the scenes, I'm just going to duplicate the tab. Within CRM, we install data mill, so you can get to it from within CRM. So it is an application that sits within CRM, just like here. And if I click on data mill, we've got various pre-configured processes in the system for you. So you've got processes for handling direct debit rejections, you've got processes for the lodgement, which is the one we're going to have a look at shortly. You've got the submission, you've got gift aid, you could create processes for just giving and so forth. Yeah, I'm going to click onto the direct debit lodgement for backs, and I'm going to click on the run button. Now, all of this will be done automatically overnight for you. I'm just running it now because for the purpose of the demo. So I'm going to give it a name, backs lodgement. I'm going to click on OK, and behind the scenes, that process will now run. Okay. Now, if I go to pipeline runs, what you'll see is this process has been started. Okay. If I was to open up a completed one from earlier, it will give you a summary of that process running. Now, these will run automatically every night. You can run them manually. You can have them running on a wizard-based approach, that kind of thing. But what it will show you is it will show you the records that it's processed, and it will show you the records that it's created. And it's really, really configurable, and each step can be configured as well. So if I was to click on data trail, what the system will give me is it will give me an idea of the record that was processed during that particular pipeline run. Yeah, so you can actually see that, and you can toggle between multiple records as well. So you can see your data as it's being processed. If the data is incorrect, you've got a corrections tab. Moment, I've got no corrections in here. I'll show you one shortly from earlier. The corrections tab will show you where the data was wrong, where you can go in and fix the data and rerun the pipeline. So it gives you all of that flexibility. It is a highly intelligent data processing tool, is data mill. Yeah, you can also have review stages and so forth. Now, these pipelines take a few minutes to run because some of them can be quite heavy processing. Okay, but what you will ultimately get as part of this pipeline is, if I was to show you, if I go back into the system in pure Blue Peter style, here's one I've made earlier, and what the system will do is mark the record as being pending, which basically means this payment schedule has been lodged to the bank. What our pipeline is physically doing is it's building an instruction file every night with all of the new instructions which are marked as pending lodgement and submitting those to Bottomline PTX for you. Now you would go into Bottomline and you'd hit the submit button, but it is a autonomous integration. You don't have to download any files. You don't have to manipulate the files. It will do that submission for you. Yeah? And once it has done that, it will then run a secondary pipeline, which then goes and updates the status to pending. Okay. Now, the reason it does that is the secondary pipeline is configured in my system to run after 3 days. And the reason we're saying 3 days in, the bank may reject the instruction. And therefore, you may get an audit rejection file pop in. And what that audit rejection file will let you do is it will let you go in and process via a pipeline, which I'll show you shortly as well. But what you've got is you've got an updater which then runs after 3 days, which saying, well, after 3 days, we've not had a rejection come in, therefore mark my payment schedule as being pending. Now, what it will do is it marks it pending on the first collection. Yeah. And then subsequent collections, it then updates the pending to active, because if it's going to fall over with the bank, it's normally on the first one. So it gives you a chance of isolating those first ones if you wanted to. And it also lets you do things like running thank you letters on anything which is pending. So you may want to run a thank you letter on the first payment that goes out and then not on the subsequent ones and so forth. Yeah. So that is kind of the pending record. And what the system will do is it will mark the payment schedule as being pending, which means it is ready for processing. Yeah. And when it's ready for processing, what you'll get is, here's one that I've kind of done earlier. It is marked as pending. It will also set the mandate date to say the bank has given us a thumbs up. This is the date from the bank. And you've now got the regular donation start date and you've got the next payment start date based upon that next payment run. If there is a cooling off period with your bank of 10 days and there's not enough time between now and the first payment day for that cooling off period to be cleared, what the system will do is increment that next payment date to the following month. Yeah. But what it has done in this scenario, it has now kind of gone in there and it has set the next payment date as being the next month. So if I come back into here, hopefully that has been completed now. And for the purpose of thoroughness for this demo, I'm also going to run the updater, which is the one it will run after 3 days to make sure it's cleared the failure from the bank. This will all run automatically for you. And again, if I was to commit to payment runs, it will kind of click on the started option in there and it will go and progress those for you. Okay. Now that we've got our instructions set up with the bank, the lodgement side of the process is done. What you're now doing is we're now going to run the claim. So the lodgement will happen every night and the claim will happen 2, 3, 4 times a month whenever your claim date is. And this is the second part of the process. Again, these will run overnight for you. But what we have is we have a pre-configured pipeline for direct debit submission straight into the bank. So if I was to open up this pipeline, okay, I'm going to do exactly the same, but this time I'm going to send it just bear with me. I'm going to send it some details. Oops, 1 minute. I think I lost the screen share. Just bear with me. I'm just going to grab the screen share again. Okay. And what I'm going to give it some parameters. Now, these will be set up automatically for you, but this basically means run this pipeline as of the 29th of March, and the system will then run a pipeline. And the pipeline will take a few minutes to run, but the difference between this pipeline and the previous pipelines, look, it's got nothing to claim, is that the previous pipelines just went through straight away. Now, what this pipeline will have is it will have a waiting stage for approval. And what we mean by approval is it will not progress the pipeline until somebody's gone in and approved that particular direct debit. Okay, so you have an approval stage and you can fully configure the approval stage You can say if it's more than £10,000 a claim, then mark it for approved. But what Alan would have to do is he would have to go into the system and approve. I've got one here, yeah, which shows you that. So this was submitted overnight via Power Automate, so I didn't have to run it. And what I've got is I've got a review block, and the status is waiting on action. Okay, and if I click on approve, I've got various options in here, and I can click on the resume option, which will then progress my direct debit. Okay, now by progressing the direct debit, again, we've got an updater stage which waits 3 days before marking the transaction has been completed, because the bank could reject it in those 3 days. But what I've now got is if I go into my direct debit, which is this one here, okay, it has incremented my next payment day, but it has also created me a new transaction. And this transaction means the bank has now collected that piece of payment for you. Yeah. So if I was to open up this transaction, the transaction has been processed by Bottomline PTX. Yeah, it is for £20 and it is on the date that we were running our claim. And this is created by that pipeline once the approval stage has been approved. And what you've also done is it's also incremented the next payment day, ready for the next claim the following month. Yeah, so that's kind of the direct debit process that you've got. But what you may also have is in that time, you may also have a rejection. And we've also got kind of rejection pipelines built for you for each type of rejection file you may get. So you may have your audit rejection, which is where the bank couldn't make the connection between the new mandate that's being set up, therefore it rejects it. You've also got the ARROD, which is the missed payments, and you've got the ADAX, which is the cancelled direct debits. So we'll have a look at the ARROD one, first of all, okay? So if I open up the ARROD one, what I've got is I've got another pipeline, but this time I'm going to run this via a Power Automate. So I'm going to click on Flow. Okay, so you can run Power Automates. I'm going to click on Import File. So you would be sent a rejection file from the bank. You will pick up the rejection file, and you'd click on Import File. You'd click on the Import button. You would then select your file, just like I'm doing here, click on Open, and then click on Run Workflow, or click on Run Flow. What that will then do is run this pipeline for you. And in this scenario, it's kind of started. It will take a couple of minutes, but what you will see evidently is that process being run for you. And if I show you on this record here, which is the one for that file, if I go to Payment Schedules Donor, here is a direct debit that was set up. It's got that bank reference there, or that payment reference, which is sent to the bank. If I was to show you the file that I uploaded, here is a copy of the file that the bank was sent to you. Yeah, the bank will give you that reference back saying it could not collect on this mandate. It will give you the details, such as what the type is or the code, along with the description. You would upload this file into that data mill pipeline and let it run. It will then go and it will identify that payment schedule, just like it's done here, and it will process that payment schedule based upon the type of response you're getting back from the bank. So in this scenario, it was payer deceased. It has marked the payment schedule with a cancellation reason of it's coming via a BACS import, and it has also cancelled the direct debit for you, so you don't claim it again. And what it has also done is, if you go into the supporter's record, it has marked the supporter as being deceased, so that the supporter can come off your segments and that kind of stuff as well. So it processes all of those rejections for you uniquely based upon the code that the bank sends back. Yeah. So that's kind of the end-to-end direct debit process. Yeah. Is there any questions on that so far before I move into gift aid? No? Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into gift aid. I'm going to go back into my payment schedule. And what we have is we have a transaction record here. Now, this transaction record this transaction record has its various details on there. So you know how much it's due for, who's it for, that kind of stuff. But what you've also got is you've got a gift aid tab. And if you click on the gift aid tab, you've got the option to exclude it from gift aid or include it from gift aid. So in this scenario, I'm going to include this income for gift aid. Yeah. And by including it for gift aid, it's going to include it in the gift aid process that we've got. Now, if I was to break the gift aid process down, the first thing you need to have to run gift aid is you need a gift aid declaration against the supporter's record. So if I click on Dave Parker's record and I go to donation information, or you have a add declaration button in the ribbon, what you have is you have a record to store the gift aid declaration. Okay, so here is a declaration that we already have for Dave Parker. Okay, now if I was going to create another declaration, which you could do, declarations come from multiple sources. Okay, if I was to click on if I was to click on new gift aid declaration, what I can do is I can select what type of declaration it is. Is it a taxpayer, non-taxpayer, non-UK taxpayer, non-UK resident? I can select the address that we were to bind onto this gift aid declaration. I'm going to select the source, and if I was to set up that, various parameters, it will have a start date which goes back to the nearest financial year, which you can fully configure, an activation date, which if this was an oral gift aid or a verbal gift aid declaration, you would need to write to your supporters, and then the activation date was when that response comes back in. And you can set up your appeal package campaign for your source code. I'm going to click on the save option, and what the system will do is create me a gift aid declaration. Now it's coming out here because it's trying to expire it. If you had a declaration which was identical to the one you've got, it will say it's a duplicate and not let you save the record. So I'm going to stick with this declaration that we've got here. This declaration start and end date needs to cover the period for what you're claiming for. So that's number one. You need a gift aid declaration on the supporter's record, which covers the claim period that you're trying to claim for. If I go back to my transaction record, okay, go back to my transaction record, the transaction must be eligible for gift aid, and therefore you should not exclude it from gift aid. Yeah, number one. Number two, the transaction must have not already been claimed for gift aid as well. Okay, so this transaction is ready to go for gift aid. Now, to run a gift aid claim, you would go back into DataMill, and if I go back to pipelines, there are 4 pipelines associated to gift aid that are all connected together. So number one is the selection of the income records that you're trying to gift aid for. So it will identify those records. Number two, it will then validate those records to make sure A, it's got a gift aid declaration against it. B, is it eligible for gift aid? Has it been claimed before? That kind of thing. Does it meet the date range, etc. Once it has done that, it will then batch your claim into small batches that you can configure. You can by all means send a huge batch to HMRC. However, if one item in the batch fails, HMRC will fail the whole batch. So it is advisable to create smaller chunks of your batches so that you've got a better chance of more batches getting through rather than the whole batch failing. Yeah. And then finally, you've got the submission to HMRC automatically, and the system will sit there and wait for it to come back. So if we start with the selection pipeline, and I click on flow, you can configure these to run overnight every day or every month. I'm going to run these manually. I'm going to click on the run gift aid. And what we've got is we've got a Power Automate with a dialog in there. And what it's going to ask me for is it's going to ask me for some parameters. And those parameters include a start date. So if you say from the end of last month to the end of this month, and the back sweep option, which basically means any previously attempted claimed transactions that failed, I want to scoop those up and I want to resubmit those. And it also includes any refunded income where you need to send the income back to HMRC. So I'm going to include the back sweeps option, and I'm going to click on run flow. Now this will take a few minutes to run. okay, because it's going to start selecting and querying your data. Again, if I click on pipeline runs, you'll see that it has started. But the difference is this time, it's picked up 6 items in here. The big difference this time, it needs to go from the selection pipeline straight into the validation pipeline. And what it does is these pipelines are kind of chained together and they're fully configurable. You may want to validate it separately, but in this scenario, we kind of chain it together because they're separate processes. Yeah. And what the system will do is once it's done the selection pipeline, which it will do in a few minutes, okay, it has completed that. If you go to pipeline runs, what you'll see is it will start automatically. It started the validation pipeline now, and it will take a few minutes to work its way through that. And then once it's validated those transactions to make sure that the transactions are correct, they have gift aid declarations on that kind of stuff, it will move on to the batching stage where it will start building out that claim for you. So in this scenario, it's picking up 1. If I open up the pipeline and I go to data trail, you'll be able to see the data it's trying to process through. So in this scenario, it's our Dave Parker record, which we saw earlier. It's going to try and process that £20 against the 25%. Okay. If I come back in there and I click on refresh, it has now completed that run. And once it's completed that run, it's moving into the batching stage. So if I was to refresh that item, and the batching stage now includes a review stage, again, fully configurable, just like the direct debit stuff. So it will take a few seconds to run through. But again, I can go in there. The status has changed to waiting on action, which means it stopped there. It's waiting for somebody to go in and approve. If I click on data trail, it will show me, the record that it tried to validate. Anything that's failed, it will pop up in corrections. And if I go to my review stage, you will see the records there that are part of this batch, and you'll be able to review those and click on the resume stage. And once you've done the review stage, that is a marker for the system approving that batch ready to submit to HMRC. So what it will do is it will do the selection, the validation, it will then batch up the claim for you. It will then sit there, wait for you to approve the claim. And once you've approved the claim, the system will then submit that claim to HMRC for you. So if you go back to our pipeline runs, and it will do this all automatically, you don't have to go into each one by one. As you can see, they're all kind of chained together, and it will chain those together. You can run these automatically overnight and so forth. It's the configurable nature of CRM. It will take a few minutes. If I go back into this pipeline run, we've now got our HMRC batch. It's got a batch ID. It shows how it's been configured. If I click on data trail, it will show me details of the claim. It has marked it as being processed. So at this point, your gift aid processing is complete. Yeah, there are no more pipelines to run for gift aid. And what I can then do is if I go back to my transaction and I refresh my transaction, which was the £20 we created via our bottom line a few minutes ago via the direct debit. If I click on gift aid, this gift aid has now been submitted to HMRC, who've now paid you on the gift aid and have now returned a status of being claimed. Yeah. If there was an issue with the claim, they would then return a status of it, having failure, that kind of stuff. But what you've now got is you've now got your transaction. It has created a batch. The batch is fully reconciled back to HMRC. So you can actually see HMRC, the donation amount in total for the batch was £20. In total, they paid out £5. These are the HMRC responses that are coming back from their API. So this isn't a manual claim. This isn't you download the claim and you submit it. This is a full-blown API. It does an autonomous claim for you. And once it's done the claim, you can also see the transactions. That one there, the transactions which make up that claim. And if I go into the claim, if I go into the transaction, each transaction will have how much the claim was for, how much you've claimed for, what was the gift aid amount, when did gift aid pay you, the actual ID that returns from the gift aid batch itself, and the response to. So you got a fully configurable option that you can debug as well. Okay. Now with these, if I was to go back, it will then create you a separate transaction record for the gift aided amount. Yeah. And those hang off separately and link together, and you'll be able to reconcile from that. And when it comes to things like the primary designation, so how do you work with your designation credits? How do you do the split? You've got a fully configurable option to saying, well, for this code, any gift aid needs to be allocated to a specific gift aid code. If you leave that blank, by default, any gift aid income that's created will be allocated to the parent here. So you've got a very, very configurable option here that you can use. Yeah. So that's gift aid. I know there's a lot there. Okay. I'm going to kind of go back to my slides now. Okay. I'm going to go back to presenting Teams mode. And I'm just going to kind of reiterate the journey that we've just been on. Okay. So these annoyingly start right from the beginning again. So I'm just going to flick through. So we've just had a look at the direct debit process, which this journey entailed. We've also just had a look at the gift aid process. So very, very similar, where what you had was you had Dave Parker who'd given you a donation, and that donation, you know, he'd expressed his wish for it to be gift aidable. Alan put the regular gift onto the system, and then another persona called Dan Knight was the person running those gift aid pipelines. Okay. And that journey was exactly as I showed you here. So what Dan did was Dan went into the system. Dave agreed to give us a gift and gift aid against the gift. That gift aid, eligible for gift aid flag, was marked on the donation record. Alan then recorded a gift aid declaration against Dave's record, just as I showed you. And Dan then went into the data mill pipeline and he ran a claim. He put the start and the end dates for the claim in. And what that claim then did was it went through the selection process, the validation process, the batching process, before finally submitting to HMRC, and HMRC then paying you back the gift with the various demographics of that gift. So that's kind of my presentation today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flick to the final slide here and pass back over to Ollie if he's still about. So thank you very much for that. I know there's a lot of detail in that, but as you can see, it's a very, very fully comprehensive, integrated, configurable option that we here at Curve have built in an accelerator. And as I mentioned earlier, we give those away free of charge to our clients. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mandeep. Harmony's put some words in the chat, but yeah, we just want to thank everybody for being here today, and obviously those that are watching back as well. We really love the feedback on the event, so if you'd like to follow the link and fill in the post webinar survey, that will be much appreciated by ourselves, but also everybody at Microsoft Tech for Social Impact as well. So Harmony, unless there's anything else you'd like to add, we're a couple of minutes ahead of time, but I think we can probably close there.
Yep, we're good. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.